So, welcome back to another video. This video is on something that my friend has recommended me. This recommendation came after I told him about the Keras Prime and Argonac um, cap and how effective it was. So this is not a specific weapon, but more so modding style. So let's just jump right into it and you'll get what I mean. So the weapon I chose for the cap, as you've seen in the video opening, is the Guantao Prime. So the Guantao Prime is a crit based polearm, and this was the build I used. And if you can see, the big difference between a normal build and this is immediately the Shattering Impact and Prime Fever Strike. Now, does this build work? Yes. As you've seen in the video opening, it will kill Demolists. However, Shattering Impact is very slow because unlike unlike Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger, which has the same description, well, almost the same description. Essentially, Shattering Impact only does stripping if it's a hit, right? You have to hit it. Whereas Amalgam Argonac Metal Auger has strip even on damage over time status effects. So Toxin, Bleeds, they all will strip armor even if you're not physically hitting the enemy, as long as these statuses come from the dagger. So the dagger will strip faster because the Daedalus Pulse will make you put some distance between them, which means that while you're distanced with the Keras Prime, you'll be stripping regardless since damage over times strip, but the Shattering Impact will have to wait until you go back in and finish the stripping. The rest of the build is the same. Prime Fever Strike, so that, one, you have Toxin, right? And the reason why you want Toxin here is because, one, it makes Acolytes really, really easy. So when you're going against Acolytes, you'll find that normal slash, just slash based weapon, unless it's a glaive, right? Unless it's the glaive throw. Slash based weapons really cannot deal the amount of damage that you really need it to deal. Whereas, by slapping on Prime Fever Strike, now you have an additional damage source, right? And it's really, really um, huge, the difference, right? Like the difference between the two, you can feel it because now your acolyte is really just dying really quickly, right? So, like I was saying, this is the build I was using, Shimmering Blight, because it's just a personal preference. If you really wanted to, you can Forma and use Bleeding Willow, right? You can. And for the mods I'm using, Condition Overload, always, it's a standard on builds. 80% melee damage per status type, so obviously we're using a primer today. Blood Rush for the crit, it's a crit weapon, might as well use the crit. Prime Smite Grineer, faction mods, always use faction mods. It's a DOT build slash and toxin. Quickening. Uh, I was too lazy to format, so I went with quickening. But the best case scenario would be to use Prime Fury, but quickening for our attack speed mod. Boreal's Contempt. This came from the new war. This is a mod from the new war. So if you don't have this mod and you haven't finished the new war, you should finish the new war and get this mod. This mod is really one of the best mods that came off that update in my opinion, right? Because I'm really big on just polearms in general. Boreal's Contempt. That's it. The one you care about is not this 90% melee damage. That's just a little bit of extra. That's it. It don't matter. The one that you really want to see is the damage from status effect, right? That 60% damage from status effect. Because for those of you that know, that 60% from status effect is the same multiplier as Ash's passive. Right, you see that 25% increased damage. It is the same multiplier. So essentially, you can be doing, if you use Ash, you have an additional multiplier. But I'm not really big on dying, so I choose to just use Revenant. Pretty much a cheat code, Revenant is. Now back to Quantum Prime. So this is itself a multiplier. Then Weeping Wounds for your status, and you really want a lot of status, but Quantum Prime is just not the best weapon for caps. I'll just put it that way. And then the aforementioned the Prime Fever Strike and Shattering Impact. Really need this too for a good like build and run. So okay, of course this would not be the most optimized setup, right? So definitely, you know, we have this. We have the Quantum Prime, and that is a viable option. However, you can use the Chronon Prime. Anything that has a law status, right? The Chronon Prime is actually a very good uh, weapon to try with this setup, right? Because essentially how you're gonna build it is just with all this, your usual three primes, and because I'm lazy to format again, I'm just gonna use quickening, but just know that you can actually just use uh, Prime Fury here. Or if you really wanted the extra crit, I'm not sure whether you need to, but you could. You can just use Gladiator Vice. Then Prime Fever Strike here. Shattering Impact. And instead of Boreal's Contempt, because we know we don't have Boreal's Contempt, right? Organ Shatter will work, right? But this build also require these builds that I'm mentioning, especially with the Quantum Prime. The ones that I'm mentioning, they have one thing. They have one thing in common. They're all using critical damage Archon shards. So if you have not done the Veilbreaker quest, good time to do it, right? Because these Archon shards really help modding, just in case you don't have enough space and you really want to get something in. The Archon shards really help. So essentially what's happening is that instead of modding Organ Shatter on the Quantum Prime, like so, right? You can see that there's no Organ Shatter. Essentially, I do not have any base crit damage. However, I'm still getting a crit damage multiplier from somewhere. That's all Archon shards, right? And Archon shards, they really make modding diversified, I guess, in a way. So with Chronon Prime, you really can try something like this, or you can even step on Gladiator Might for the extra critical chance, and you're still getting critical damage multiplier. And while you're not getting as much crit, I do want to say that this will do better because it's a higher status chance. The mix of issues with this setup is one, you really want a high status chance weapon, right? So the Chrono Prime is a good choice. The Orthos Prime is a good choice, right? So you look at my Orthos Prime setup, this specific setup, you know, I have Prime Fury, I have Prime Fury Strike, I have Shattering Impact, and before you ask, I could have chosen to use my Riven, but there is really no point because I'm already getting an external crit damage, and I really don't have space for my Riven, so this will have to do, right? And with more status and more crit than the Cronin Prime, you can probably say this may or may not do better than the Cronin Prime. I cannot confirm. But I will say that the Chrono Prime does have stance uh, privileges, right? The stance is just better for Tonfas. This, however, is a polearm, which means it benefits from Boreas Contempt. Getting the extra 60% damage from status effects and 90% melee damage. Now, it's my really big recommendation, like it's just a recommendation that you should go with high status effect weapons, especially if you're going for level cap and especially if you're going light attacks like me, right? Because at the end of the day, your damage really comes from your damage over times. In level caps, damage over time really is king. There are very few weapons that actually can go level cap, and almost all of them aren't melee weapons. And you gotta understand that if for a melee weapon to go to a level cap with raw damage, it's heavy attack all the way. It has to be heavy attack. It will always be heavy attack. So you really need to know what you're doing. The way I've modded the Orthos Prime is essentially how I would ideally run this setup, because I'm getting an additional multiplier, I'm getting the strip effect, and I have a ton of status. So fully built up, I'm really just applying status, right? I'm not having issues with the amount of statuses I have. I'm just only having issues with shattering impact, right? And for Quantal Prime, the disadvantage is that you really don't have the statuses to build up that the status the amount of status procs on the enemy. So when you when you use Expedite Suffering on it, you're not getting as much damage, which has the result of as you've seen in the video opening, I'm not one-shotting enemies all the time. However, I do believe that it's just an inherent issue with just low status effect, right? If you use a high status effect weapon like the Orthos Prime, the Chronon Prime, you should not see such issues. Now, another issue with this mod philosophy is that Shattering Impact is very slow. Like I said, at the start, Shattering Impact only works when you're hitting the enemy. So if you're not hitting the enemy, it is basically useless, right? You're not stripping. You're not actually stripping if you're not hitting the enemy. So it's advised to have a fast weapon for that. So the Arthos Prime is good, the Cronin Prime is good, the Guandao Prime was good, but the only issue being, like I said, status. If you really wanted to, you can go and experiment with other weapons, right? But in my honest opinion, this mod philosophy is it works very, very well to a certain amount of weapons, and these weapons are just high status effect weapons. The rest of them, they don't work, especially if you're crit based, right? So if you have a weapon that is below 28% status effect and you're trying to use this, you might see some issues when it comes to actually using expedite suffering. But after, you know, if it's more than 28%, you should be fine, right? The point is to get as high as about 30% and above, right? Because with 30% and above, you're really getting close to that 200% status chance with weeping wounds, right? So definitely that is advisable. So now I will talk about the rest of the builds. So with Revenant, it's my go-to expedite suffering setup. So you've seen this in my first ever video for Karis Prime. And Karis Prime, really good, right? Really good. But you should go check out that video. For this, same thing. Armor Intensify, Blind Rage, and Transient Fortitude for my ability strength. It gives me 298, which means when I hit Expedite Suffering, I'm doing 2.98 times more damage. It is its own multiplier. Prime Continuity for more ability duration to counteract Transient Fortitude's negative duration. It gives me more time on Enthrall, and when you're going against Acolytes, Enthrall is really useful, right? It makes them take more damage, and that's really, really good. It really get rid of Acolytes really fast. And the power and the ability strength gives me more charges on my Mesmer skin. Growing power for more ability strength. If you're doing status effects, with a high status weapon, you're pretty much always gonna have this additional 25%. Prime sure-footed, just in case Mesmer skin runs out, you're not gonna get knocked down by some stray heavy gunner. You'll just, you'll you won't be CC'd, right? You will be able to just recast your abilities. Now for Prime Flow and Equilibrium, that's your energy economy. Paired with the Panzer Profiler, you should basically never be out of energy. Rolling guard in case your Mesmer skin runs out, you roll, you have invulnerability for 3 seconds, and within the 3 seconds you just recast. And natural talent for casting speed. This makes the whole kit more fluid and smoother to use, right? Now my choice arcanes would be Arcane Strike and Mode Augmented. Mode Augmented gives me 60% ability strength on 250 times stacks, right? So if I have all my stacks, I should have at 60% more ability strength, and that pushes me into 358% strength, right? Which means that when I hit Expedite Suffering with Mode Augmented fully stacked, I'm doing 3.58 times more damage. Now, Arcane Strike would be more attack speed for my melee weapons, and more attack speed, really, really good, because you're talking about status effects, the more attack speed you're doing, the more times you're hitting, and the more chances for statuses to apply, right? So that is Random Prime's build. Kuvaton Core, I brought the Kuvaton Core as more so a just in case, right? Like, let's say violence spawns and you don't have energy, right? It will, like, let's say energy drain conduit just happened and violence spawns, right? Then most likely what you're gonna do is run away so that your mesmer skin doesn't run out, and because you don't have energy, you can't really enthrall. Kuvatonko will give you the range you need to engage and still stay at a safe location, right? So this worked for me, right? The scenario I described earlier happened to me. Okay, so definitely this works, and you're gonna kill the acolyte really, really quickly. Epitaph. The, the build for Epitaph really, really simple. Amalgam Barrel Diffusion for the additional dodge speed. Really, you can choose to use the normal Barrel Diffusion. It's fine. Lethal Torrent for the fire rate. You really don't want too much fire rate, but you also want some fire rate. So this will work. Sure Shot. Status chance. Very good. Ice Storm, Frostbite, and Pistol Pestilence for the viral status effect. The Ice Storm for the increased viral weighting. And the status chance that the 60/60s provide. Now, Scorch is just a choice. You can really go with Jolt if you have it, right? Because right now, essentially what's happening is that I'm getting 180% status chance from 60/60s alone. And Scorch is really just here as an additional status effect, so that I can proc Condition Overload. If you really wanted to, you can go for Jolt. And if you're running with a teammate and your teammate is doing Heat Inherit, right? So then you probably want to run Jolt so that your priming doesn't get in the way of their like heat status effect, right? So this is essentially the build for Epitaph, right? And for the Orthos Prime, we've already seen the mod philosophy. It's just Shattering Impact, Fever Strike, and your usual setup mods. Now, for my choice of focus school, I use Naramon because I can't keep combo. I have a very bad habit of just tunnel vision, and I just hunt down the Demolist, right? I really don't care about my combo count. So what essentially what Narbon does is that it helps me do that without me losing all my combo, right? So when I go in there, there's some combo I just need to really hit as many times as I can to build back that combo. Usually I just have to hit like 5 times. I have 12x combo again, and that's pretty much it. My Panzerval Profiler build is really, really basic. I'm just way too lazy with Forma, so this is essentially what I'm working with. And yeah, we can. I think we will go for a round in Olympus just to show you how it works. So we're here in Olympus. Just open the door. And same thing like I said, check for blind spots. One place that it can spawn. So you can start building up combo here. And now I have suffix, combo multiplier. What we do is to listen for the Demolist beeps, like right there, and then we prime until we see, and yeah. In low levels, it really doesn't matter. Shattering impact's not all that important. But for shattering impact builds, like just shattering impact builds alone, you really want to start stripping about 6,000 ish, right? Because at that point, your only damage source is slash, and slash based weapons really don't enjoy fighting other statuses. So because you already have toxin, that is, in the way of proccing slash. But your but for the total damage, toxin will do more than slash. So you really want to strip. Prime, and there you go. It's a very easy weapon to get into. It's a very easy mod philosophy to get into, right? And the Orthos Prime itself, it's really beneficial to have the amount of status chance that it has, right? Like you're seeing that I am proccing a lot of status effects, um, and they're dying really really quickly, as opposed to the run that you saw in the video opening, right? I'm not one-shotting Demolist even with Expedite Suffering. That's just because I do not have enough status effects on the Demolist, and that happens. Are you gonna pulse? Yeah, there we go. So in lower levels, like in my first video, in lower levels it really doesn't matter when you use Expedite Suffering, because it will kill regardless. But just note that because Toxin is part of Expedite Suffering now, you really want to strip in higher levels, so that the Toxin damage that is being consolidated by the ability is actually being dealt directly to health rather than being gated by the armor. So Prime, you see the 10 stacks of Viral and Blast, and now stop moving. And now, Cold and all that. Then just do this, and they're dead. So yeah, this is basically it for the mod philosophy. Pretty much applicable on most weapons, as long as they themselves do not have innate elements that go against that isn't toxin. So, for innate toxin weapons, this is good. For basically any other weapon, that's good, right? But the catalyst being, you really want great status chance, right? But that's basically it for this video, right? If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe. And as per usual, the disclaimer is that this build is really just a fun build, fun mod philosophy that my friend introduced to me, and it works very well, but it's definitely not meta. It's not fast, right? So you know, if you didn't like the if you didn't like the mod philosophy, just keep that in mind. So, but you know, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.